And now, the Savage Nation Hollywood Idiot of the Day.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to take a little trip together. We're going to talk about self-hating individuals in the media. Self-deprecating ethnic humor is the focus today for a couple of reasons. In this confusion of America today because of the gang from Chicago and the great imposter who is playing at president, the man with training wheels, Barack Hussein Obama, people do not know what conservatives stand for. And since he has a compliant media, they would like you to believe that the largest majority of the electorate, the conservative population, has no idea what it stands for. Well, I clearly have defined what it stands for, borders, language, and culture. Many of you can understand what I mean when I say we stand for borders. How hard is that to figure out? When we have internationalists who want to not only destroy our borders, which they've effectively done by permitting unlimited immigration primarily from Mexico, but now they want to destroy the U.S. dollar completely and replace it with an international currency, therefore destroying your entire basis of existence as an American. So we understand what borders mean. If I say language, we know what it means. We don't want a polyglot. We don't want the Tower of Babel. We want the language English in a business place, in a governmental workplace. We don't want to go to the DMV and press 2 for Spanish. But many of you don't know what I mean when I say culture. When I say borders, language, and culture, as I said, you can understand borders, language, but you don't know what culture means. Let me define what I mean by culture, first in the negative. I mean that we conservatives are sick of the sewer pipe that runs out of Hollywood. I mean that we conservatives are sick of the vermin in the media who perpetuate vulgarity, cursing, sexual degeneracy, making a mockery of everything that we believe in. That's what I mean by culture. We're sick of the sewer pipe that comes out of Hollywood. Case in point, Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm. Now, the first rule is what you do is you don't talk about people you don't like because you don't want to give them publicity. You know what? I'm going to talk about someone I detest who needs to be stopped before he brings terrible calamity upon the Jewish people. And this man, in my opinion, is insane. Everyone around Larry David is insane. These are people so insular, so wrapped up in their own insanity that they think they're intelligent because they're making money at it. But as someone asked, is one of America's funniest people actually just an anti-Semite in Jews' clothing? What are we talking about? Who is this man? Many of you never heard of him because you don't get HBO. This fellow, Larry David, a typical Brooklyn type, the type that would have gone into the Garment Center years ago. Instead, he migrated out to Hollywood and produced this vulgarity over the years. Started with a show called Seinfeld. I never saw anything in Seinfeld because I never liked the Woody Allen schlemiel Jew. I never liked the image of the weak Jew. I saw it with Woody Allen. I saw it with people before him. They made me cringe. And then along came Seinfeld, and the average American finally got a picture of what the Jew is, thinking that all Jews are whiny, all Jews are neurotic, and that all Jews are paranoid, all Jews are complainers, all Jews are unethical, all Jews are selfish. In other words, they were Seinfeld. That's who Larry David created, Seinfeld, with the guy, whatever his name is, Jerry Seinfeld. Now the guy goes and creates a new show called Curb Your Enthusiasm, which is shown on HBO, to great acclaim amongst the Hollywood types. Only Hollywood seems to like it. Why? David exemplifies the worst in the Jewish stereotype, and yet he displays them as if they were badges of honor. So they call that brilliant. Why is it brilliant? Well, last night, for example, hit a new low. Last night's episode was the last straw for me because of its anti-Christian hatred. It was called The Bear Midriff. And in it, him and Jerry Seinfeld have to talk to their assistant, Maureen, about her belly-bearing attire. Instead, she's fat, and she wears a top that lets her stomach hang out. So, in other words, the one Christian in the show is shown to be ugly and fat and stupid. And she quits. You follow me? Now it gets even uglier. Larry David takes a pill to increase his flow of urine, and it causes urine to splatter on the wall. He goes to her house to apologize, and his urine splatters on a portrait of Jesus, with the urine coming down from the portrait's eye, and he runs out of the bathroom. The next day, his employee comes in screaming that there's been a miracle, that there's a weeping Jesus in the bathroom. and that she's going to quit her job, and that her and her mother are going to go to churches and talk about this miracle of Jesus weeping in the bathroom. Meanwhile, it's Larry's urine running from the portrait of Jesus. Now, I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you if this you think is appropriate as humor. And if he's such a brave, brazen man, Larry David from Coney Island, New York, what does he have to say about Muhammad? How come the great Larry David feels, well, he can ridicule Jews, nothing happens. He can ridicule Christians, nothing happens. But the great Larry David and his clowns from Brooklyn are surprisingly silent when it comes to the Islamo-terrorists. Isn't that interesting? So I bring us back to the main point, which is self-deprecating ethnic humor. And what I have to do is frame the whole thing again in the context of Borders, language, and culture and talk about this. Why? Because some entertainers depend on their own God-given talent to make a living. Think back on the age of Steve Allen. Steve Allen also fought against vulgarity in the media. He never used a dirty word to get a laugh. Every time I turn on HBO, there's another degenerate in front of another staged audience, cursing and screaming in the most vile language imaginable. And people sit there as stooges laughing. And they fall back in many cases on vile racist stereotypes about their own people in order to make a buck. For example, there's a woman named Margaret Cho who does the same thing about Korean people that Larry Davis does about Jews. She puts down her own people to get a laugh out of the audience. But look at the difference between Groucho Marx, who was Jewish, and Larry David. Groucho Marx was one of the most successful comedians of the 20th century. He didn't curse. He didn't put down Jews. But he used his own wit and did not indulge in ethnic stereotypes. Now look at Larry David, the man who created Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm. This man revels in perpetuating Jewish stereotypes. He specializes in creating and portraying characters who are weak, neurotic, whining, and vulgar, and all Jewish. And as time goes on, he gets more and more vile and less funny. And I said last night I saw an episode of his show where his character urinates on a picture of Jesus, and the people who are in the house who own the picture of Jesus think that it's a miracle, and he mocks them. I believe every Christian in America should be outraged, and I believe every Christian in America should demand that HBO take the show off in order to send a clear message that you're not going to tolerate any more of this Christian bashing. What if this episode had attacked Muslims? What would the reaction be if it had been a Quran instead of a picture of Jesus that he urinated on? Why doesn't the midstream media seem to care about this? The truth is that the leftists who cry the loudest about racist stereotypes happen to be the ones who do the most to perpetuate them. So Larry David bashes Christians and gets away with it, but he also makes Jews look terrible, as I said to you. Every Jew in his series is angry, dismissive, judgmental, antagonistic, and ungrateful. Every one of them. Every one of them who is a man is seen as a kind of complaining, whining, unethical, paranoid, selfish, and uncaring individual. Not the type of people that you would like to meet. And yet this type of self-hatred portrayed by Larry David is passing for humor. But look at the people he surrounds himself with. All of the characters around him, Jeff Garlin, Richard Lewis, they're Jewish, and all of the characters have similar traits. Most of them completely unflattering. Most of them actually despicable. In fact, I believe that if Hitler were alive and he hired a propagandist to create an image of the ugly Jew, he couldn't do better than to hire Larry David and his group from Coney Island, New York. And that's why I say to you, what has happened to the media in this country that they would produce filth like this that ridicules not only Christians on a regular basis, but Jews themselves by a Jewish cast? In the beginning, the show was quite funny. And something happened around 05 and 06 when he went from humor into self-hatred. For example, he ran an episode about a Seder. A Seder is the Jewish Passover ritual. And during the Seder, he does certain things in it where it is not hilarious, but it's self-deprecating against the customs of his own religion. He portrays Orthodox Jews in the most horrendous fashion. In fact, his portrayal of Orthodox Jews is reminiscent of the cartoons that were published by the Germans and the French during the Nazi period.